network was interviewing multiple people, and check out what one of these quote-unquote trans kids had to say. Now, I want to make this clear before we get into it. I'm not criticizing the child here. We're going after the parents. But go ahead and see what this trans kid had to say about Donald Trump here.
What concerns have you had about speaking out?
That I'm gonna be like murdered. Like one day I'm gonna be walking down the street and somebody's gonna come up and like shoot me or something.
That's a really scary thing to be worrying about at 10 years old.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah, that should not be a worry.
Michelle,
right.
what's going through your mind as you hear your daughter say this?
It's just hard to hear her say that. And she asked me three questions after she heard who won the election. Are we gonna have to move? Are they gonna take me away from you? And am I not gonna be able to get my medicine?
Oh, I wonder why he thought that.
It's frightening.
We've seen Republicans put a lot of money and energy into transgender issues. More than $200 million were
Stopping
spent this
child abuse,
election
yes.
cycle in anti-trans ads. What does that feel like to have so much attention by all these politicians on your identity?
It makes me feel like they think we're puppets that they can play with, and it's just so wrong.
So close. That is so sad to watch, that last kid there. It makes me think that they think, no, the Republicans aren't the ones who see you as a puppet they can play with, sweetheart. The one who sees you as a puppet they can play with is your child-abusing parents. Probably just your mother, if we're being honest here. And your dad's a cuck who sits idly by, and the indifference of good men is worse than the actions of evil men. We get it. That first one, though, man, let me ask you a question. When you were 10 years old, how often did you worry about somebody coming up behind you and murdering you while you walked down the street?
0 times.
Never. No, here, and I had a sketchier childhood than you did, and I didn't have to worry about it either. But let me ask you a question. Where on earth would a 10-year-old, because that's not a normal thing for a 10-year-old to think of. The kid says that, the news reporter says that, the mom agrees. Where do you think that 10-year-old might get the idea that somebody could walk up behind him while he's walking down the street and kill him? That didn't just randomly pop into his head. Do you think that maybe a manipulative child abuser that they call a parent, in my opinion, planted that idea in his head?
No.
No, not a chance. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't be. I remember when, and this just goes to show how horrible the left is. I mean, how the level of child abuse that goes on in these circles. I remember in 2008, I would have been 12. Yeah, 12 years old, going on 13. Barack Obama had won the election against John McCain. We had 8 years of Bush, and I wasn't really old enough to remember much of Clinton, but all of my sentient years had been spent under a Republican regime. We were like a Reagan conservative household, politically. And I remember the next morning, my parents told us this is not the end of the world. It just means we need to be a little bit more vigilant, and it's going to be harder to get what we want. We're just going to have to work harder to get what we want. But we didn't win, and it is what it is. Nobody told us that we were going to be put in camps. Nobody told us that we were going to have to leave the country. And by the way, my parents were avid talk radio listeners at that point in time. They were listening to Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, all the people stirring everybody up, implying that maybe Barack Obama was the Antichrist, riling people up, FEMA camps, they're going to take your guns, lock you in concentration camps. There's going to be a second civil war. Obama's going to be the last president of the United States when he declares himself a dictator. All of it, by the way, I'm not an Obama fan. All of it was bullshit to varying degrees. So they were getting fed all of that crap, yet they still didn't come at us and pass that burden of stress. And I'm sure they were stressed about Obama. Not to the degree some of these lunatics are about Trump, but I'm sure they were worried about Obama taking office. They were worried about the future for their children, but they didn't pass the burden on to us because that's what child abusers do. That's what, and more importantly, that's what people who are mentally immature do. You're the parent You deal with the stress. You don't pass the stress onto your 10-year-old. I don't care if it's it's something to do with the election. I don't care if you're having trouble paying your bills. I don't care what it is. You shut up, you swallow it, and you deal with it. You don't let your child have to deal with the same level of stress you are. That's part of being an adult. If you can't do that, you should go to a fire department and drop your kid off and tell them, have someone who behaves like a grown adult take my child because I'm clearly not fit to be a parent. That's what you should do. If you pass the burden of your political stress onto your 10-year-old child, you are a piece of shit.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to click the link in the description to get the full episode on Rumble. If you prefer to listen along, you could actually get us on Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. You can also go to www.outlawstreamers.com to learn more about not just my show, but tons of other great shows and all the exciting projects they have coming up. Follow my socials at Caleb Isn't Funny on Twitter and Instagram, at Caleb Salvatore Comedy on the Chinese Spy app that is TikTok, and be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks, and we'll see you every Saturday for brand new episodes of That's Based. Peace.